The Calling, Part 1, The First Lamb. I can still hear the voice, as clear as the day I first heard it. It wasn't loud, no booming declaration from the heavens, no angelic choir. It was soft, like a breeze slipping through the cracks of an old church door. A whisper, barely there, but it cut through everything else. They need saving. 3 words. That was all it took to turn my world upside down. I didn't understand at first, but I felt the weight of it. I was just sitting there, on the church steps, watching the children play in the courtyard after Mass. Their laughter echoed through the air, so pure, so light, like they hadn't a care in the world. They were untouched, innocent. But then the voice came again. They need saving. God spoke to me that day. I know it in my bones. I felt it in the way the words settled inside me, like they were filling an empty space I hadn't even realized was there. Children are born pure, aren't they? They come into this world without sin, without pain. But it doesn't last. No, the world ruins them, corrupts them. Lies, violence, greed, it all creeps in. It was as if I could see the darkness closing in around those children, inching closer every day, ready to take away that purity. I had to act. God needed me to intervene, to lift them up to Him, before the world could destroy their innocence. Who was I to refuse such a calling? Mafi, Samuel, the first offering. Samuel was the first. He was only 8 years old, with soft blonde curls that caught the sunlight like a halo, and eyes so blue they could have been plucked straight from the sky. He looked like one of the angels depicted in the stained glass windows of the church. He was perfect. Too perfect to stay in this filthy world. I knew him from church, of course. Samuel was always quiet, polite. He'd sit in the front row every Sunday, hands folded in his lap, absorbing every word the pastor said. He believed so deeply. There was a purity about him, an innocence that glowed brighter than the others. From the moment I saw him, I knew. God wanted him back. One Sunday after Mass, I asked him if he wanted to meet God. I told him that God had chosen him for something special, that he had a mission. His eyes lit up with excitement. There wasn't a trace of doubt in his face. He trusted me completely. Why wouldn't he? I was someone he saw every week, someone who taught him about God's love. Children, they trust so easily. That's what makes them so beautiful. But it also makes them fragile, doesn't it? So vulnerable to the darkness that surrounds them. A fraternal connection. Growing up, I wasn't alone. My brother Adam was always by my side, well, physically, at least. We were fraternal twins, but that's where the similarities ended. Adam was the charming one, the golden boy. The one everyone liked. He had an ease with people that I never quite mastered. After our parents died, Adam went on to live a clean, respectable life. I tried, but the darkness that had been born into us seemed to settle in me more deeply. Adam didn't know everything about our childhood. He didn't hear the chants at night, the whispers from the basement where our parents practiced their rituals. Flashback. The parents' occult ties. Our parents weren't like other people. I used to think it was normal. How was I supposed to know any different? The candlelit rooms, the strange symbols painted on the walls, the way they gathered with other adults late at night in the basement, chanting in languages I didn't understand. My brother and I were told never to go down there, but curiosity got the better of me. I'd sneak to the top of the stairs sometimes, listening to the eerie chanting, watching the shadows that flickered in the dim light. They called it protection. The rituals, the sacrifices, They believed it was to keep us safe from the evils of the world. I can still remember the sight of animals sacrificed on the altar, blood staining the floor. I should have been scared, but instead I was fascinated. I didn't know it at the time, but something from those rituals, something dark, stuck with me. Adam, on the other hand, seemed oblivious. He pretended none of it existed, like we lived in some normal household. Then one night, everything changed. I'll never forget that final night. The candles burned brighter than usual, the chanting louder, the tension in the air so thick I could barely breathe. My parents had locked me in my room, like they always did during their rituals. But something was different. The sounds from below became frantic, desperate. Then suddenly there was screaming, screams that tore through the walls, unlike anything I had ever heard. And then, silence. When I was finally let out, I found my parents lying on the floor in the basement, their bodies twisted unnaturally, faces frozen in terror. I never found out what they had summoned, but from that day forward, I knew the darkness hadn't left with them. It had stayed with me. The first ritual. I led Samuel into the woods behind the church. The trees were tall and thick, their branches swaying gently in the breeze, casting long shadows that danced along the ground. The deeper we went, the quieter the world became, like the trees themselves were holding their breath, waiting for what was to come. We reached a small clearing. The autumn air was crisp, and dead leaves crunched under our feet. It was as if the world was winding down, preparing to sleep. I watched Samuel kneel down in the dirt, bowing his head like I had asked. "Pray," I whispered to him. "Pray, and God will hear you." As he clasped his small hands together, murmuring his prayers, I stood over him, my hands trembling. The voice was louder now, clearer. "They need saving." I reached out, my fingers brushing against Samuel's soft skin. His neck was so fragile, his pulse beating beneath my fingertips. For a moment I hesitated. Could I really do this? Could I take this child's life in my hands and offer it up to God? Samuel trusted me. His innocence was pure, untainted. He was everything the world would eventually destroy. But the voice came again. "They need saving." With that, my grip tightened. Samuel's prayer was cut off by a small gasp. His little hands shot up, grabbing at my wrists, his fingers trembling as he tried to pull me away. For a second, I thought he might overpower me. He struggled fiercely, more than I had anticipated. He broke free from my grip, scrambling to his feet, his face pale with terror. Samuel ran. The trees loomed tall as he darted through the underbrush, his small body disappearing into the dense woods. For a moment, panic surged through me. He would escape. He would find help. Everything would be ruined. But then the voice, calm and unwavering, whispered again. "He will not get far." I followed after him. Samuel was quick, but he was scared. He tripped over roots and fallen branches, his sobs echoing through the trees. I caught up to him quickly. His small form collapsed into a heap, gasping for breath. As I loomed over him, his eyes, those innocent, trusting eyes, looked up at me one last time. I finished what I started. The passing of time and new prey. After Samuel, I returned to my life as if nothing had happened. I went back to my job, a delivery driver for a local courier service. The job suited me well. I moved from town to town, dropping off packages and keeping to myself. It gave me plenty of time to think, plenty of time to listen for the voice. It wasn't long before it came again, louder this time. More need saving. By now, Winter had settled in. The first snow had fallen, dusting the streets in white. The air was sharp and cold, and Christmas decorations lit up the houses I passed as I made my deliveries. But I wasn't thinking about the holidays. I wasn't thinking about the packages. I was thinking about the next child. Her name was Sarah. She was delicate, with long brown hair that her mother tied in yellow ribbons every Sunday. She had a habit of humming little songs to herself during the sermons, her voice soft and sweet, like a lullaby. But the darkness was closing in on her too. I could see it every time she looked at the world with those wide, innocent eyes. I knew she wouldn't stay innocent for long. No one did. Internal descent and the failing relationship. In between the offerings, I tried to maintain the facade of a normal life. I had a girlfriend, Anna. She worked at a nearby diner, always smiling, always kind. But things had started to unravel between us. She could sense the change in me. I couldn't tell her about the voice. How could I explain what I was doing? That I was saving children, that God had chosen me for this mission. The tension between us grew with every passing week. She'd ask me where I went late at night. She'd catch me staring into nothing, lost in my own thoughts, waiting for the voice to come. Eventually, her patience wore thin. We fought constantly. She accused me of hiding something, of being distant, cold. She was right, of course, but I couldn't tell her why. She wouldn't understand. By the time winter melted into spring, Anna had left me. She couldn't take the distance between us anymore. It was for the best, I told myself. I didn't need distractions. The voice was the only thing that mattered. The whispering shadows and the devil's grip. As the months passed, the voice grew louder, more insistent. I began to see things, shadows, moving in the corners of my vision, whispers, following me wherever I went. At first I thought it was God, but the more I listened, the more I realized it wasn't him. It was something darker. The devil. He had been there all along, hadn't he? Watching me, guiding me. Each child I saved, each offering I made. It wasn't for God, was it? The warmth I felt after each death wasn't God's light. It was something else, something colder, something that was growing inside of me. They were mine. The voice wasn't God's. It had never been his. The children I thought I had saved, they weren't in heaven. Their souls belonged to the devil, and so did mine. The final offering. The spring air was warm when I found the last child, Timmy. He was only 7 with a gap-toothed smile that made him look even younger. He loved to draw. During Sunday school, he'd always be sketching butterflies and birds in the margins of his notebook. Once, he gave me one of his drawings, a butterfly with bright blue wings. I still have it, folded up and tucked away, a reminder of the beautiful soul I lifted to heaven, or so I thought. The devil had fooled me. He had used me to gather the souls of the innocent. The warmth I had once felt after each offering was gone, replaced by a cold emptiness that gnawed at my soul. I was trapped. I couldn't stop. I couldn't undo what had already been done. The devil had claimed me, and I had willingly done his bidding. As I stood over Timmy's lifeless body, waiting for the familiar warmth to fill me, I felt nothing, no peace, no light, only the crushing weight of the truth. I had damned them all. Seeking help, a moment of weakness. It wasn't always easy. The voice, the whispers, they weren't always something I could embrace. There were times when the darkness felt too heavy, too suffocating. I remember the day I stood in front of Dr. Marshall's office, my fists clenched so tightly, I thought my knuckles would burst through the skin. Dr. Marshall was a psychologist. My girlfriend Anna had begged me to see someone after one of our bigger fights. She said I wasn't myself anymore, that something had changed in me. Of course, she was right. But how could I explain to her that I wasn't in control of my own mind anymore? That the voice inside me had more power over my actions than I did? So I made an appointment, partly to placate her, and partly because, deep down, I wanted to know if I could be fixed. Maybe, just maybe, I could be saved. The therapy session. Dr. Marshall's office was small but warm, cozy, in a way that made my skin itch. It didn't feel right to be in a place like this, a place where people poured their hearts out, seeking peace and clarity. I wasn't like those people. My heart wasn't mine anymore. The room smelled of leather and lavender, and soft classical music played faintly in the background. It was meant to relax patience, I suppose, but all it did was heighten the ringing in my ears, the faint hum of the voice that had become my constant companion. Dr. Marshall sat across from me, her dark eyes assessing, patient. She didn't rush me, didn't demand answers. She just waited for me to speak. And when I finally did, I was surprised by how easy the words came. "I've been hearing things," I said, my voice hoarse. "For a long time, a voice." She nodded, scribbling something down on her notepad. "Tell me more about this voice." I hesitated. How much could I tell her? How much did I want to admit? It tells me things, that there's evil all around, that I have to save people, that they need saving from this world. My hands clenched in my lap, the nails digging into my palms. Sometimes it gets too loud. It tells me what to do. I can't stop it. Dr. Marshall's pen scratched against the paper again, and she leaned forward slightly. "And do you believe this voice is real? Do you think it's trying to help you?" I thought it was, at first. But now the warmth I used to feel, the certainty that I was doing God's work, had started to turn cold. Now I felt less like a savior and more like a vessel, something hollow, something the voice used to carry out its dark intentions. The struggle against the darkness. There was a long silence between us. Dr. Marshall studied me carefully before asking the question I had been dreading. "Have you ever hurt someone because of the voice?" I swallowed hard. I could feel the sweat beading on my forehead, my pulse quickening. The voice stirred, irritated by her probing. It whispered to me, louder than usual. "She's trying to stop you. She doesn't understand." "I know," I lied. "No, I haven't." But I could see the doubt in her eyes. She didn't believe me. I didn't even believe myself. The truth was clawing at my insides, begging to be let out. But I pushed it down. I couldn't let her know. I couldn't let anyone know. Dr. Marshall leaned back in her chair, giving me space. "What you're describing sounds like auditory hallucinations," she said gently. "It could be related to stress, trauma, or a mental health condition. We can work on this together." For a moment I felt something shift. Hope, maybe. A way out. What if she was right? What if this wasn't real? What if I was just sick, and all of this, the voice, the killings, was a product of my broken mind? But then the voice roared inside me, louder than ever before. "She's lying. You're not sick. You've been chosen. Don't let her deceive you." The darkness wrapped itself around me, cold and suffocating. I gripped the armrest of the chair, my knuckles turning white. The voice wouldn't let me go. It had me in its grip, and I knew, deep down, I was powerless to fight it. "I don't know if this can be fixed," I said, my voice trembling. I don't think it's something you can help me with." Dr. Marshall looked at me with a sadness I hadn't expected. "It's never too late to get help," she said softly. "You've already taken the first step by coming here." But I knew better. It was already too late for me. Falling deeper. I didn't go back to Dr. Marshall after that. Anna kept asking me about it, hoping the therapy would help bring back the man she thought I once was. But that man was gone. And the voice. It was angrier now, more impatient. It knew I had doubted it, even for a moment, and it made me pay for that doubt. The dreams got worse after that. Vivid, terrifying dreams where the children I had taken came to me, their eyes empty and accusing. I would wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, the sound of their screams still echoing in my head. But no matter how much I wanted to fight it, no matter how much I wanted to free myself from the grip of the darkness, I couldn't. I wasn't strong enough. The voice had me, body and soul, and it wasn't going to let me go. There was no hope, no escape. The day I realized that was the day I stopped pretending to be normal, stopped pretending I could ever be fixed. The darkness had claimed me, and there was no turning back. The final descent. After that failed attempt at seeking help, I became even more devoted to the voice. It was all I had left. The last thread of purpose in my hollow life, the rituals, the killings. They became easier. The more I gave in, the less human I felt. And perhaps that was a blessing, to feel less. The voice praised me, filling me with cold comfort. It told me I was doing what was right, what was necessary. The world was full of sin, full of filth. It needed to be cleansed. The children, they needed saving, even if they didn't know it. But the truth? The truth was that I had failed. I had tried to fight the darkness, and it had devoured me whole. End of part 1.